Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that pursuant to section 11(1) of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229/2016, the temporary facility provided for the public to watch and hear the December 10, 2024 regular council meeting is to be held in the multipurpose room at the Tofino Community Hall located at 351 Arnett Road in Tofino, BC. And that the meeting is to be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted via the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Before we adopt the agenda, there needs to be an amendment to the agenda, and that is to move item 10.1 to item 10.8 immediately after 10.1. I have to facilitate our fire chief getting to fire practice, so very important. So without further ado, we'll read from the chair this motion that the December 10, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as amended to reorder item 10.8 to be considered immediately after item 10.1. Second. All in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Excellent. And that takes care of that recommendation, does it not? Oh, excellent. Thank you. Also, through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 26, 2024 be adopted. No objection, that motion is carried. 5.2, rather long, just a bit of a housekeeping recommendation, but I'll again move from the chair through unanimous consent that the minutes of the regular council meeting held September 12, 2023 be amended to reflect the acting mayor Soar declared a conflict of interest regarding agenda item 10.6 due to her future employment having an interest in the application. That acting mayor Soar left the meeting at 5:37 p.m. and appointed Councillor Steer as interim chair. That Chair Steer then called a recess at 5:37 p.m. and reconvened the meeting at 5:39 p.m. and that acting mayor Sawyer returned to the meeting at 6:05 p.m. and that the minutes be adopted as amended. That was unanimous. There are no objections, and that motion's carried. Excellent. Moving on to the mayor's report. It was my pleasure to visit our MLA and new Minister of Health, Josie Osborne, in her office at the legislature, and I do want to thank council for allowing me to do that. For advocacy, Minister Osborne and I were able to talk at length about rural healthcare, Tofino General Hospital application, housing, our essential service housing applications that are in process and upcoming, and recreation on the coast, and much more. And it was an excellent meeting, and I'm proud and honored to have our very own past Tofino mayor as Minister of Health. Just today, it was also a great pleasure to our CAO, Miss Atiana, and I were able to meet with Tourism Tofino, the Long Beach Chamber of Commerce, and have a great meal together. And it's such a great privilege to be part of a community where we all work together as such a team for the benefit of our community as a whole. So thank you. What else we got here? Also on the advocacy piece, Tatiana and I were recently able to attend a Resort Community Collective meeting where we continue to advocate on behalf of all resort communities at the provincial level for RMI, MRDT, and keeping tourism in the spotlight. And that's we're preparing to meet the new Minister of Tourism next Monday, and look forward to having more updates from the RCC group for all resort councils. So there's going to be an upcoming meeting for council to get a backgrounder on the resort community collective and all the great work that everybody there does. Also, it was wonderful. This one flew under the radar a little bit, but it was great to hear that our airport has now an enhanced GPS approach system, which allows the approaching airplanes to fly in at 250 feet rather than well over 500. So it's the only pun you're going to get out of me today. Under the radar. What else? One last thing, and that is, I know as we review some of the wins we've had this year, you know, I got to walk up 4th Street on a sidewalk and a bunch of kids and parents and strollers, and it was just such a wonderful thing to see. And I was reflecting on how great the work on the MUP has been, as well as Mackenzie Beach, and it's such a wonderful asset for active transport in our community. Just is such great investment and money well spent. So thanks to all who are involved. It's just great. That's it for me. Public comment on agenda items.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now make an open call for comments. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to make a comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function. Before making a comment, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. No comments, Mayor Law.
Excellent. Then we will move on to presentations and reports. Item 10.1 is really a bit of a housekeeping report, and I'll look to council to volunteer to read that recommendation.
I move that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held November 18th, 2024 be received.
Second by Councilor Steer. All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried.
And I move that council support further development of a limits to growth policy that does not include an evaluation matrix.
Second by Councilor Steer. All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Great. Moving on to 10.2, we have a report from Infrastructure and Public Works on the limits to growth policy. Oh, no, sorry. I forgot to write this down. Thank you very much. 10.8, actually.
Yeah, Mayor, briefly, there was an item 9.1 regarding correspondence. Council may choose to discuss.
Oh, shoot.
Now or later as that.
Sorry, we'll thank you very much for that. We'll rewind to correspondence 9.1. Tla-o-qui-aht limits regarding limits growth. This is a letter. Council can address it now, or perhaps preferably we can move it to within the discussion, the limits to growth discussion itself. Looking to council. Everybody happy with that? Excellent. Well, let's do that. Thank you. I wrote all over my notes and then I scribbled over everything. Okay, then we are on to limits to growth. Oh, no, sorry, we're not. 10.8. Fire Protection Service Agreement with Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. Great report. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is my first time in front of you, so thanks for me. I don't know how I avoided it this long. Here I am. Go easy on me. So yeah, the Fire Protection Services Agreement with Tla-o-qui-aht is up for renewal this year. It expires at the end of this year, so myself and other staff have been in communication with staff at Tla-o-qui-aht, renegotiating the agreement essentially. And the only major changes to the agreement, can I have the next slide? Is there a clicker here? Okay. Yeah, so we're proposing a 3-year term, which is another 3 years on top of our previous agreement was for 3 years. And essentially the only major change is the increase in the service fee. since the inception of the agreement in 2019, Yeah, so the agreement's been in place since 2019. Since that time, we have been called out to the community a total of about 13 times for structure fires and alarms calls and different things like that. And we have received excellent support from the community on all those calls. And as part of this conversation, we've renewed some discussions with the fire emergency services within Tla-o-qui-aht about some joint training opportunities and how ways we can help them to develop their own fire department, which is something that they're striving to do. And that was talked about in the previous agreement. But COVID basically shut those things down. And so hopefully we can bring those back and find some connections that way. So financially, the service fee is $228 per service property, which is a 5% increase from the previous agreement. And that 5% is essentially reflective of the fire department's budget increase over the last 3 years. We're currently servicing 209 properties out at Tla-o-qui-aht and so. And so recommendation, right?
You don't have to.
No, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna open it up to council for questions, if there are any questions, and perhaps we can go right into comments, because I think this is pretty easy. So, Councillor Steer?
Question and comment. Thank you so much for that. Great first time. Just on the, and this is a great, we know we've had this service agreement with Tla-o-qui-aht for a while. I'm just curious, two parts to the question. One, does it service over, are you servicing over to Apitsit, or is it strictly Tla-o-qui-aht and up on the peninsula?
No, it's just specifically Tla-o-qui-aht and Sausta. Apitsit, we can't service basically because we don't have the means to get firefighting equipment over there. And then the Tinwis property falls under a different agreement, which is actually a bylaw.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right. And so I was just wondering, I know historically a federal government agency that would bring some of your members over to some of those locations in the past. I was just wondering what that relationship was. And then the second part, in terms of the conversation with TFN and the training opportunities that are coming on, is there a desire for them to have their own, in essence, unit there, or continue on with the agreement that they've had with Tofino?
Yeah, exactly. So there is a desire, and I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but some of the conversations I had with them were that they are hoping to grow their own firefighting capabilities, and they're looking to put a fire hall out at Long Beach if they can, those kinds of things. And as they work towards that, we hope that we can, help them train up their members and that sort of stuff with our training abilities and that kind of thing. So
Excellent. Thank you.
yeah.
Questions, comments from council before we go ahead and read? Excellent report, excellent presentation, very supportive. So let's head on. Would somebody like to read the recommendation?
Sure, I'll move that. We go down to 10.8, that council direct staff to enter in an agreement for the provision of fire protection services with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation attached as Appendix 1 to the staff report titled 2021-2027 Fire Protection Service Agreement dated December 10, 2024.
2025. 2025.
Service agreement dated December 2024. I have on here. Is that? It should be
25.
25, sorry, 2025.
Good. All right. As clarified, any further comments? All in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Excellent, thank you. Get it at 20, I get the paper 2025, 2027.
Okay, I was just, that the service agreement date
Yeah.
December.
Sorry,
24.
it expires on the 10th of 2024, so we want to renew it on the 10th of 2024.
That's my understanding.
But that was, it's like 2021. That's it.
Oh, that's where we're going.
Yeah, it's all good, all good. Everybody knows.
This will be a host.
It's all right.
This will be it.
None of us over 50 can see what we're reading.
Here, here.
Okay. Well, then we're moving on to
Then
ten
you ended
point
up thinking that
two.
was 2025.
Let's move on to 10.2 limits to growth policy, report from infrastructure and public works.
Council. So I'll be presenting an overview of the latest version of the limits to growth policy, which is being recommended for adoption this evening. So I'm hoping to keep this relatively succinct. I'll be providing a quick recap of the process to date, summary of the key objectives of the policy, and an overview of the revisions since the November 18th committee of the whole meeting, and a summary of next steps should council decide to adopt the policy as proposed, which was appended as appendix 1 to council. So here's a quick snapshot of the process today. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion and consideration that's gone into formation of the policy that's supported today. The process began in May when staff received formal direction from council to move forward with the policy, and has consisted of several meetings, scoping meetings and revisions of the policy that responded to both council and public feedback. In addition to formal council meetings, staff engaged with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Chamber of Commerce, and Tourism Tofino, as well as provided project information and opportunities for feedback via our Tla-o-qui-aht webpage. So obviously you're familiar with the policy to date, but as a little bit of a refresher and for the benefit of the general public, I'm just going to go over the key takeaways of the policy. Firstly, it establishes a remaining water capacity of 120 cubic meters per day. And this is further allocated into two main parts. Half of that 120 cubes is intended for Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation led development. And the other half is intended for non-Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation development. Of that non-TFN development, 50 cubic meters per day is reserved for residential development, and 10 cubic meters per day is reserved for non-intensive commercial, institutional, or industrial uses. The policy also establishes a mechanism to allocate and track water consumption for new development in the form of a water allocation certificate or WAC. It restricts tourist commercial development and high demand non-residential uses, which we're defining as anything over 0.6 cubic meters per day from receiving a WAC. The policy also establishes a standardized method of calculating anticipated water demand based on residential typology, and it operates on a first come, first served basis. So here's a bit of a summary of the revisions that have been made to the policy since the November 18th committee of the whole meeting. The main change was based on the direction from council at that meeting, which was to remove the evaluation matrix, which was previously Schedule A of previous VAPs. Aside from this change, staff made several additional very minor tweaks to the policy that were intended to improve policy comprehension and function only. No substantive changes to the policy were made. To summarize the changes, this included an update to the definition of water intense land use to explicitly exclude residential uses. Section 8 of the policy, which outlines uses eligible for a WAC, was retitled to better reflect the section's intent. And it was updated to clarify that new residential uses granted through zoning amendments and temporary use permits are eligible for a WAC. The anticipated average consumption shown in Schedule A for apartment buildings and manufactured homes was revised to the numbers shown on the screen to address a previous error in calculations which unintentionally included water meter data from other uses, which resulted in an inflated number. Staff also made a clarification to how the duration of a WAC was interpreted in Section 6 of the policy. So since November 18th, committee of the whole meeting staff received feedback from the public regarding concern over the proposed duration of a WAC. And this concern was outlined in a letter which was received today as official correspondence. Specifically, the letter identified concern that the duration of a WAC for each development approval process wasn't long enough, and that processing delays caused by the district may lead to the expiry of certificates on no fault of the applicant. While the policy already included language that enabled the extension of WACs at the discretion of the district, staff revised this section of the policy, which is now section 6.5, to clarify that the duration of WACs are intended to reset at the beginning of each development trigger. So for example, an applicant would receive a WAC for a duration of 2 years upon zoning amendment approval. That same WAC would then reset or restart for an additional 3 years upon receipt of a subdivision approval, and again for an additional 2 years upon receipt of a building permit. So implementation next steps, should council wish to adopt the policy today as written, it would come into effect immediately. Staff have developed communication materials and administrative documents that will go live on the district website shortly after adoption. And staff will begin communicating policy requirements and remaining water supply during application processes. And we would also put a quote unquote live water supply tracker on our website. I also just want to reiterate that one of the key mechanisms built into the policy is periodic monitoring and evaluation, including reporting requirements starting at 6 months. Now, this is a new policy for the district. I view this as sort of a quasi-living document that will respond to shortcomings and things that we identify that need to be updated. And these reporting requirements will allow us to ensure that the policy is achieving its intended goals, and whether or not we need to update it. That brings me to the recommendation, which is to adopt the industry policy as included in Appendix 1 of the.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to open it up for a round of questions from council, if there are any. Perhaps we'll start over with Councillor Spear and work down.
Yeah, just a quick question, and thank you for the report once again. Just as the letter of correspondence came in through 9.1, and I think it has been addressed, I was just curious if you had contacted the letter writer to clarify and inform as to the concerns that were in that letter.
I have no.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Floman.
Yes, my question was regarding the 6, 12, 24, and 48 month update periods. If there's any wax remaining after that time, would we need to have an extending period after 4 years, or is that something that would just happen automatically?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Sloman. I think maybe just for clarity, the reporting periods of 6 months, 24, 48, those are just intended to for staff to sort of conduct a review of the policy to make sure that it's sort of achieving the goals it's intended on doing. And that review or reporting mechanism wouldn't impact any outstanding applications in the queue or any overall sort of water allocation, remaining water allocation or supply numbers. I'm not sure if that clarifies what you're getting at.
Yeah, I think what I was more thinking of is like if we have any more remaining wax at the 4-year period, perhaps there might be like a change that needs to happen in our policy. So just because of like whatever may happen. And I'm just wondering if like, say we still have remaining wax after 6 years, like maybe perhaps something might have changed and we might need to, more issues might have arisen that we are unable to foresee at this time, if we'll be able to look at them then.
Right, thanks for the question. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but I think that the whole point, I guess the gist is that the policy will be reviewed to identify if it's achieving its goals at different periods of time. But I think also just to clarify, section 6 of the policy does identify specific durations of each RL certificate, which could potentially be extended based on district discretion. I'm not sure what else to add.
Okay, thank you.
You have a question? Go ahead.
It's just a clarification of Councillor Somon's question. I believe I understand what it was just, and maybe something that we've discussed already, is that this is a living document. So if we're seeing that there are still room to have the certificates, that we will be assessing criteria and what's on the table.
Certainly.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, Councillor Sloan, is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
The questions from council over here?
Well, it's me.
Okay. I have a couple of technical questions. Just perhaps this one, if there's an existing use, say under a temporary use permit that's, this is hypothetical, that's using, say, 10 cubic meters of water, and then they want to go through zoning amendment or whatever, blah, blah. And is that, my understanding from reading this document is that the existing use would then not be included in the, so it would be anything above that would be the WAC. Now, is that how I read that?
Correct, yes. It's an interesting point on whether or not a use permitted under TUP would be considered an existing use or not. I think that's my general sense based on the way that the policy is written, is it would not be considered an existing use. Existing use is something that's permitted under previous zoning, non-TUP zoning rights. But you're right. Generally speaking, an existing use would be one that is currently on the parcel, and any new water allocation certificate would go towards any use that is above and beyond the existing use, provided it's not a water intense use. If that makes sense. So anything above and beyond 0.6 cubic meters per day.
Can I just clarify this again? Maybe this will come back, but this is a bit of a technical thing, and maybe it only applies to very few existing properties, but there's the potential of, say, more water use than the zoning actually allows presently. But the temporary use is using more water than the RDU for that unit would be. So then when that comes up for a WAC, the planning staff will, or infrastructure, whoever's doing it, planning will then assign the actual zoned use, but not the actual real use that's going on through the TUP. Sorry, I'm probably asking the same question twice, but and let me follow that up. If it is in fact that the RDU of the existing zoned use is used instead of the actual use under the TUP before, say, a rezoning or whatever, or a zoning amendment, would council be able to make that equation for that specific use? That's what I'm asking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess firstly, council always has discretion built into the policy. Secondly, Mr. Rogers, I might call on you to sort of provide additional insights.
Thanks, Ron. I'm gonna try to answer to the chair tomorrow. I'm gonna try to answer the first question and then we might have to talk back and forth on the second question. I'm not quite sure. But in what I think we're talking about is that if there's an existing property that just say has residential zoning and they have a current temporary use permit that allows them to do something else, on expiry of that TUP, any future use of that property will be subject to a new WAC. Not based on what the TUP was, but based on what that zone is. And it'll go through the process at that point. So the TUP, whatever the current TUP allocation is, won't follow that property.
It's okay. Sorry, we can just. I think there's enough flexibility in this document that we can walk through some specific, maybe some specific, happenings that we could probably walk through.
And I think maybe I'll just provide a comment. This is why we're building in these periodic opportunities to review the policy, because as we implement this is all new territory for us. We've attempted to sort of anticipate a variety of scenarios in the policy design, but we may encounter some scenarios that we didn't fully anticipate, and so we'll through that. Yeah.
Great. Sure. Okay. I think it's okay. We can take that off. Line some other thing. I think it's okay. I think I'm confident that we have the benefit of the community and staff and council all at the forefront. So we're going to do what's best. I do have a question about if there is flexibility for SDUs for standardized typologies. If for instance somebody is building something and this SDU, just hypothetically speaking, is 0.4, but they come, and say they have an engineer and say, hey, look, we're going to do rainwater catchment. We're going to do all these things. And then, and then we is there the potential for an applicant to argue for a lower STU using those designs and engineer reports, or is that something we can't go?
Yeah. It's a yes.
That is a yes. Okay. That's great. Thank you. That's it for me. I see no other hands up and other comments. So let's go ahead. Would somebody like to read this recommendation?
I'll move that the limits of growth policy attached as Appendix 1 to the staff report titled Limits to Growth Policy dated December 10th, 2024 be adopted.
Second by Councillor Steer. Any further comments from council? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Excellent. We're going to move on to 10.3. We have a bomb cyclone debrief. Mr. Rogers, Mr. Clement, Ms.
Our Director of Infrastructure and Public Works and I were both fairly involved in the event, so I'll kind of run through it. We debriefed this internally a couple of times now, and then Mr. Rogers can jump in with anything I may have missed. So we had a windstorm, a fairly significant windstorm on November 19th. And the hazard, a tree blocking the highway was first called in to Tofino Volunteer Fire Department through dispatch to the department. And at that time, an old growth tree, or several trees actually, almost 2 meters in diameter, was down across Highway 4 between the two gas stations in town. Fell from the inlet side, reaching over to what we know as the Woodsmere property. And the tree took with it power lines, which were all tangled up together. So Tofino Volunteer Fire Department was called to the scene and was directing traffic and pedestrians. No vehicle traffic was getting through. Some pedestrians were making their way around the tree on the property. At that time, I was in touch with Mr. Rogers, and we decided at that time to activate the EOC at level 1. It was virtual EOC. Level 1 EOC is primarily communication and monitoring, so it's not something we typically communicate to the public that we're activated. There's a handful of staff, communication staff, myself, our emergency program coordinator, who were active in EOC, and then the fire department and emergency personnel were, excuse me, in the field. Tofino Volunteer Fire Department obviously identified right away that this was going to be a risk to emergency services as ambulances were unable to access the hospital, and quickly acted to open up the connector trail. It's the first time that that's been done, that the connector trail was opened, and actually within half an hour, there was an ambulance that was trying to access the hospital. And so they went through with fire department escort to access the hospital. So that evening, I believe there was one other ambulance that went through later that night, and fire department personnel were escorting hospital staff and that sort of thing through the trail, not opening it up or publicizing it widely to the general public, because we were trying to preserve that emergency access for the ambulance. And of course, if someone goes through there and gets their car stuck or something like that, it's going to create a problem. Staff were in touch with, of course, the Ministry of Transportation and Hydro. At that time, Hydro communication was quite difficult with power out and so on. And Modi was hesitant to send their crews out into the field given the conditions, maybe 20 km/h winds, and we had public works crews out as well initially, but pulled them back for the safety of those personnel. Overall, I think the event did go well. I think that some of the learnings we had were that, potentially we could use other communication channels to get information out to the public. Social media, excellent, very quick for communication staff, but not everyone is connected to the internet, particularly when there's an emergency. And we did struggle even within our own teams to get messages through when people had, poor self-protection and so on. At the time, it did not appear to the staff that were in the field and on the ground that a warming center was required, but we did hear after the fact that might have been something that was appreciated by the community. There weren't people actively coming up here trying to get through initially, but I think the next day we did hear stories of people overnighting in their car and so forth. So I think that was something we would do going forward. Aaron, I don't know if there's anything more to add there.
I don't think so. I'm happy to ask any questions and provide any additional details.
All right, thank you. I'll open it up to council for questions, perhaps first, before comments. All right,
Maybe it's half and half.
let's do, I got Councillor Sloan, you got a question.
Yeah, I was just, well, first, I'd like to thank everyone for their quick response for that storm. I guess my question is, how does the public, like, does the public know what is considered an emergency use of that access? I just heard from some people that they felt that they were an emergency service provider and should be able to use it. And I'm just wondering what the guidelines for that are.
Thank you, through the chair. I think at the time, the priority was access to the hospital. So ambulance certainly the priority, medical personnel, first responders, firefighters, etc. I think we were unsure initially how successful that would be. It was dark. It's a very windy trail. There's some steep grades. There's no lighting or anything like that through the trail. So we're initially very cautious about getting folks through. The following day, I think we had some success with convoys of hospital staff and things like that. And in the future, we may be able to put measures in place that would safely get folks through, not as a, you're commuting to your job at the coffee shop kind of an emergency, but if folks were stranded, for example, and their home was on the other side, then we would be able to get them through.
Through the chair, Councilwoman, I think I can add to is that so after the night when we were just keeping it open for ambulance and fire, we were still in the middle of a windstorm at that time, and as Mr. Monk said, it's a dark, windy trail. We didn't want to have openings the first time. We didn't want to make sure there was no accidents or anything else that created more issues for us. The next day, we were actually operating just as a district, not really as an operations center, and we developed a system whereby people who were self-identifying as first responders, such as hospital staff, obviously the police, ambulance, fire, hydro, tell us to get through back and forth in making a phone call to me. And at that point, I was in my role as Director of Infrastructure and Public Works and sitting there also the fire captain. So I was the point person for the daytime for about 8 to 10 hours to allow people back and forth. So we did move some people back who weren't necessarily meeting that definition. If they called us and it made sense, move them. There was a lot of traffic on that path because we didn't close the path, so it was still open to the public, and there was a lot of traffic back and forth, people moving medicines, people moving other supplies such as flowers for weddings or stuff as well. So there was a lot of use of that path by pedestrians. The community kind of self-organized around that, and we were just making sure that we also had control of either side. We had public works on either side, and if somebody was to show up there, the public works staff, being full of myself, or at the time was our Deputy Chief Johnson, who was actually running the escort truck, and we would sort it out then. So we got, as far as I know, we got everybody who moved through, who asked, and moved through. Made sense. Again, to Mr. Vermont's point, and then if I did this again, we probably would arrange a one-time flush either way to move people's cars back and forth. But I will say that at the time, since I didn't get that. I didn't get that. We did move one elderly couple first thing in the morning, came to us and were cold. And we moved them, so they came right to the fire department and we moved them. We just weren't advertising it because we weren't sure exactly what we were doing and it was all quite new to us. But I don't know. I'd have to check with Deputy Chief Johnson, but I don't think we refused anybody in the end. We moved another group of private individuals who work in the excavation business. We moved them to as well, so that they could be part of the support team to get that tree out of the way when we did the next day.
Question, go ahead, Councillor Boyer and then Councillor Steer.
Thank you. Through the chair, I had a question, although you addressed the first part regarding opening the community center as a warming center. Due to the amount of people that weren't able to get home, although many people were luckily able to stay with friends, some weren't. And the second question is, would we be interested in the future having a conversation with any of the resorts or properties, you know, on the other side of industrial, just to start a conversation? So say something like this were to happen again, and we would know that we had a conversation with Tinwis where they said, yes, we could do a warming center in our conference room if you need it. Just because I did hear many stories from the community about sleeping in cars or having to pay very high prices for hotel rooms just to have somewhere warm to be for the night.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the need for a warming center on both sides of a highway closure was something that was discussed in the debrief, and this facility is excellent, but if you're on the other side of the tree, it's not going to be that helpful. So yeah, that's definitely something we'll look at.
Well, thank you.
Councillor Steer.
Through the chair. Yeah, thank you. And I think you answered most of it, but I just have some of the feedback that I did have was in the immediacy of the event, there were what was described to me as separations of family on one side of it and on the other, and there was concerns about not being able to get across to the other side in family obligations and stuff. So, and I think you partially answered it, and maybe in the debrief and in the looking at in terms of what we deem as emergency services or maybe even emergency priorities. Would there be conversation around, and I heard you say about escorted through in those, you know, this is a first time event where we're dealing with it, but I'm just wondering if that was a situation again where we have, you know, parents or whatever on one side and children on the other or vice versa, would we be able to establish an escorted convoy to get those people through our trail access?
Yes, to the chair, Councilor Steer, of course, probably not at night. I don't think I've heard anybody through there at night other than fire, ambulance, or police. Potentially hospital staff, you know, maybe them. The trail remained open for the entire duration of this, even during the storm, which I think we talked about shutting it down, but also didn't want to cut off people. So there were people who were organizing themselves to get to one side, walking through, and then meeting up with family on the other side. So that happened all day the next day for walking. So it's about a 15-minute walk from here to that location. And I know a lot of people self-organized and did that. We have talked about potentially in the daytime offering a kind of scheduled Weagle shuttle back and forth to try and move people as well. But to Mr. Moore's point, we are at this point, this is an emergency, and we're gonna try to maintain that for emergency personnel as much as we can. I hope that answers.
Yeah, no, the only concern was, of course, that separation of family on one side and the other, and of course, the anxiety that is created around those types of issues when you can't get to. And then what are their choices? And panic is the one that usually comes.
Well, I appreciate the question. I didn't receive any comments from anybody during the time to move for that reason, and we would have made it happen. There were two different access streets, so the trail going through there, and the people were actually going around the tree, which is like a 1 minute walk around there, not something we were promoting. Obviously, there was down hydro lines around private property, but people were making their way across. And if someone had come to us at that moment and said, my so-and-so child is on that side, I'm the only, like, we would have found a way to move that person.
Yeah, I might inquire with that. There was a couple to see what the reality of that situation was. So, but thank you for the answer.
Super, I have a comment and a question. My comment is that, you know, we've recently had another, you know, potential emergency situation with a tsunami, you know, the potential of a tsunami alert. And I noticed a significant improvement in communication already. So I just want to recognize that happened. My question is, Voyant Alert. Now we all try to subscribe and get people to sign up. What is the trigger for using that in a situation like this? And what can we expect for that mode and other modes like email, for instance?
Our emergency through chair, emergency procedures identify a number of situations when one would use Voyant Alert, and it is usually an imminent threat. But you know, it's something we can look at. Are there other ways that are perhaps less alarming to utilize that technology? Yeah, I think it's something that our team would spend a little bit more time with. I think there's a balance between alarming people and having almost like a, you know, notification fatigue where it's Friday again, it's just Voyant Alert going off for the, you know, like it does every month, because you don't want people to become too used to those type of notifications.
Okay, I look forward to hearing more about that. Okay, any further comments or questions from council? Perhaps now's a good time for questions if they have, or comments if they haven't already made. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, just the amount we can react to, like a single, maybe once in 100 or 50-year event, and build all our planning around it. I'm not sure, but I think we were really lucky to have the trail and the fact that it remained unblocked as well. We could have been blocked on both routes with that amount of wind. So it's great that we have it and we got through what needed to get through to the best of our ability. So thanks.
I think it's common when after the chair is that the trail, we recognize that too, and we went through after the trail, and we think we've got a couple of improvements that we can make. We were like within inches of amps was not getting through at the side, and so making sure that we do some improvements. Potentially, the idea of maybe being able to get a fire truck through there is probably not going to happen, but looking at that, doing our gates a little bit different. So we had to bring people through the wastewater treatment plant property, which means you're in and around all that, the tanks and everything, and I mean people follow you and they're pretty reasonable. But there's some other opportunities that we move them off out of the wastewater treatment plant area and through back by the recycling station. So we're going to look at that as well. Some improvements we can make, recognizing that it did serve us really well, but maybe we can help us along.
Great. Any other comments? Final comments? Thanks. Thanks for that. Thanks for that debrief. Appreciate it. Moving on to 10.4, we have a Q3 financial report, corporate services.
Council, we are going to look at the third quarter of current fiscal year 2024 and have a look at the financial reports. I would like to preface all this by saying that this would have a celebratory feel of all the work that everybody involved did for the great community of Tofino, and that will be shown and being presented via the next slides. The information provided in the financial report is unaudited and subject to change. Also, all values are provided as of September 30th, 2024. To give a bit of a lay of the land of the next slides that we're going to look at, there are two major parts of this presentation. And to get out of the way with the more boring parts, we'll start with the financial officer's report. And we will go then into the divisional project status update. And, starting with the financial officer report, it will have few parts to it, and we'll start with property taxation, then moving into the contingency allocation, user fees and charges, utilities revenue, followed by water consumption. In terms of property taxation, at this point, I can note that the tax notices were sent out in May, as well as noting that July 2nd is the due date for taxes, also the tax penalties. No supplementary adjustments have been made up to end of the quarter, which is September 30th. Also, no tax sale were done for 2024. In terms of property tax collection update, I can report that as of July 2nd, 2024, the value of current taxes outstanding is $810,115, and that is a decrease of 35% over last year, which we can see a value of $1,254,000. In terms of tax penalties and interest, there are three main areas. Current taxes, penalties on such current taxes were $59,410, 42 decrease over last year, same time. Taxes in arrears, which are interest on taxes from 2 years ago, was $7,753. That is a 169% decrease over last year, but considering the value, it's fairly low. Also, the interest on delinquent taxes, which represent taxes being applied 3 years ago, are at $998, which is a 9% increase over Q3 from last fiscal. Looking at the contingency allocation, the value that we have for 2024 for general contingency is $180,000. Out of that, the corporate services had a current spend of $127,000 at this point, composed of IT expenses, electrical upgrades, and community services had a spend of $20,000, composed of vehicle safety equipment and accessibility plan. And for infrastructure and public works, we had repairs and maintenance of almost above $19,000. The contingency for water fund sits at $44,880 for this current fiscal. Out of that, $34,000 were spent limits to grow policy work, also repairs and maintenance, leaving us with a $10,000 balance at this point as of September 30th. And for the sewer contingency funds out of the 131,559 funds adopted for this fiscal. We had $12,818 spent, leaving us with $118,000 balance at this point. In terms of user fees and charges, as we stand of September 30th, 2024, I can report that we are on path with the planning that we had under the 2024 budget being adopted. I would point out to two of the fees and charges that are exceeding the current 2024 budget. One is under administration, and the variance is $11,000, being composed mostly of admin fees from water and sewer funds, land lease revenue, and rental revenue. And the second value that increased over the current budget is cultural events, with a variance of $24,330. That is due to filming revenue. For infrastructure and public works, the user fees are again in line with the projections. The only one that's brought in above the 2024 budget is the parking program, for which we'll have a slide coming up soon. In terms of water revenue, looking at current 3 quarters versus 2023, we can see that there was a small increase Q1 and Q2, and a greater increase for Q3 of this fiscal versus 2023, increases 25%. That is mostly due to a combination of consumption and change in utility rates. And for sewer, it's mostly the same story for the first 2 quarters, but what you can see is a greater increase in the revenue for Q3. And that is due to the same reasons for consumption, which I will have a slide coming up, and also the change in utility rates, and specifically the sewer utility rate provided an increase of 89% versus previous ones, hence an increase of Q3 revenue versus 2022. Looking at the utilities revenues overall of adopted versus the forecasted for 2024, we can see a variance of 12.3% for water and 4.6% for sewer. And overall, we're expecting for the utilities revenue to bring us 2.3 billion, which is around 8% increase versus the adopted 2024 budget. And this slide, I would say, shows a lot of good information, and it refers to the water consumption for the last 3 years. And note that the values you see on the screen are in cubic meters. And the 2 groups of consumption is residential and commercial and other. I will point out the fact that over the 3 years, the percentage split between the two groups is 31% and 69%, and that happened for the last 3 years, which is, I find it very interesting, changes there. In terms of variance of consumption between the years, I will mention that last year we had a drop. We had a drop in consumption versus 2022. We see an overall drop in consumption of 9.2% in 2023 versus 2022. And this year, it was almost a flip of that. We can see an increase versus last year, which was 2023, of an average of 7.5%. And overall, it shows us that this fiscal year, consumption-wise, presents a drop of 1.7% over what happened years ago.
Can I have a question for clarity? Is this Q3 or is this the entire year?
This is the entire year and includes the forecasted consumption values for Q4.
Thank you.
I will move into the divisional project status updates. And we'll start with corporate services, where we have only one project, and that refers to the server replacement. That replacement is the server at Municipal Hall, and it started in 2024, was completed in 2024. We had a few technical issues with the initial cloning, and that brought us with overreach on the budget of $4,800. And that additional funding was provided from general fund contingency as included in a previous slide. And at this point, I would like to turn the presentation to Ms. April Pramant, Director for Community Services.
Thank you. I'll be presenting Community Services Division. I try hard not to look at this. If we keep on turning this way, try not to have my back to you. So this table summarizes the operating projects. So I'll go through them fairly quickly and we can stop if there's any questions. I'm already looking at it. The Recreation and Park Strategic Plan is in progress with the first round of public engagement just wrapping up. Community Recovery Framework, that's an emergency preparedness project, and that is planned to be deferred to 2025. Housing Accelerator Fund or HAF grant projects are underway. Environmentally sensitive areas reports, that is also in progress. The zoning bylaw update is deferred to a future time when we're fully staffed in planning services. So staff plan to come back in 2025 with a new timeline. Emergency Program Strategic Plan also in progress, and both the EOC and ESS grants, those projects that we receive funding through UBCM for are both in progress. Tsunami siren audibility review is complete, and staff will be coming forward with more information on that likely in the new year. And EMCR Indigenous Engagement Project, I just attended a meeting today with the region on, and that is in progress as well. On to capital projects. Just to highlight these projects that were reported as completed in Q2. So the EOC stair replacement project, so that's, we need to change the name of that building, but the upstairs of the fire hall is no longer the EOC, but that, really nice stairs, probably much nicer than the rest of the building, were constructed before Q2. Cox Bay Waterfront was also completed before Q2, as were the Neal Street and Village Green improvements, which is my favorite project of the year. Aside from the wastewater treatment plant. Air filling station and SDVA replacement, there's a photo of it there. You're not seeing any totals there because it was delivered and installed just into Q4. But that has already been used, and at 2 recent fire calls, the firefighters were able to use it to fill the SCBA tanks. Fire hall seismic upgrades. So the district has had a number of assessments on the fire hall over the years, one in 2018 and another one in 2021, which reported that the building is in poor condition, has a number of structural challenges, not great for a post-disaster building. So this year we engaged McElhaney Engineering to look at, well, what can we do here to bring this building up to a standard that we would feel good about, housing our emergency services in. And we got a fair ways into that project, and they said you should probably just stop spending money on studying what you can do for this building, because its investment in structural upgrades to the building are not recommended due to the age and the nature of the building. And I'm sure council's heard about the building several times before, and unusual construction, how it was pieced together from several buildings that came from elsewhere and so on. So staff will be coming forward with recommendations for next steps through the financial process in 2025. Monks Point Cultural Workspace, and this was originally envisioned to make some improvements to the building and the property in order to have a shared office space there for Tla-o-qui-aht and for some district staff working, our cultural programmer to be working out of there, at least on a part-time basis. Through the evolution of the project, it's come about that it's still used as a meeting space, so the main floor of the building can be used for small meetings, groups, AGMs, that type of thing, lessons, classes. But the Tla-o-qui-aht language program is upstairs of the house as well as one of the downstairs rooms. And we're still working on making some accessibility improvements. The stairs and the access to the house are quite old, and were appropriate for someone's garden, but perhaps not for a building where you're inviting the public to come for meetings and classes and so forth. So that is continuing on. There will be some further construction in 2025. Q4 there were some IT expenses, as we have the building now has Wi-Fi and all of that great stuff. Community hall renewal, and I have to apologize because these are the wrong community hall project slides or project images on here. These really belong in Mr. Rogers's slide, which he's going to talk about later, which was around the floor and the roof. But this project was for increased functionality in this building, primarily the foyer space where we built a small reception area, and kitchen improvements, which are underway but not at the construction phase yet. And the construction of those will likely happen in 2025 substantially. They are also funded by a $100,000 grant that community program staff was successful in receiving from United Way, which helps with the cost of that project. Municipal hall renovations. I'm not sure if everyone has had a chance to go through there, but staff moved in over the past week, and that space is just sort of having the finishing touches and furnishings and things like that installed, but it's a lovely bright space. And that's shows the year-to-date actual, but we'll be quite close to that project budget that you see there. Tsunami Siren 5. This is the installation of the district's 5th tsunami siren, and this was to follow the audibility testing, which identified the recommended location for the 5th siren. So more detailed information on those findings that the study is complete will be coming forward through the financial plan process. This siren installation, at least $70,000 of it is to be funded by RMI, and that will carry forward into 2025. Mackenzie Beach Public Washroom. This was maybe about half done by Q3 and is now just nearing completion. And this project increased the budget. It was completed well within budget, so we will have some other funding to carry over to future projects in 2025. Village Green Stairs. Oh, this project. So we had a $40,000 budget for this. We did work with an engineer to come up with a design. It is a bit of a tricky location with grades and existing concrete infrastructure. The quotes that we received on that design were well in excess of this budget, and we kind of put tools down on that because the staff could not justify coming forward to council and asking for double the budget for a set of stairs. So staff is doing a look at that, whether there's something we can do internally. We've also discussed, the option of just landscaping it in, but likely people will still find their way through that desire line, the center of Campbell Street there into the park. So this will come back to council slightly. First Creek Dock sidewalk access, this is largely complete now in Q4, but was just getting started in Q3. There were some changes to the design, some challenges in that area around grades and drainage that allowed this project to be completed quite a bit less expensively. No, it's telling me that's not a word. In a much more cost-effective way than was initially proposed. So more information on the final totals of that. We're still getting some of those costs in. Multi-use path upgrades to the path around Sharp Road and also south of the Tofino Info Center. The Tofino Info Center were completed and again well within budget, so we'll have more funding to reallocate to muck improvements in 2025. The North Cox Bay access ramp, this project has been designed, but construction is proposed to take place in spring of 2025. Dockland Bridge replacement, council's seen this one a number of times. We have some real challenges with access at this location and constructability. So there's been some redesign to try and find something that can be brought into the site. There is procurement is underway now for that, but it will have to happen in 2025. There is a related project, South Tonquin Trail upgrades, and council will recall that when staff presented this before, that the bridge was to be replaced and that would provide us access for equipment that we could then get across a bridge that was safe to get equipment across to upgrade the south end of Tonquin Trail. We are looking at now whether some of this may make sense to be allocated to the upper portion to connect Peterson Drive to the bridge because that would help us actually construct this bridge. So that's something that we're looking at now. We can enter school ball fields. So this project is nearing completion, waiting for that grass to grow. If anyone's been up there, it's a big, flat, huge area. It's looking really good. The fencing was not quite complete at the end of Q3, but is just nearing completion now. There is a section that the contractor will be coming back to complete, but is leaving open so that the school may access it for recess and that sort of a thing. But they will come back once the grass grows on this section and it's established. They will remediate that section so that it's all uniform. And that is all I have. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I will turn it over to Mr. Rogers.
Great. Questions? Questions? Comment? Just a comment, Councilor Chair?
Yeah, I do. Through the chair, Mayor Law. I just wanted to, this really points out in 2024, the amount of work on projects that are extremely beneficial to the community. And I can't thank you enough. The challenges we know that are encountered were overcome. So those hurdles were bypassed. And I really want to thank all of staff on some of those recreational projects specifically that have come to fruition. And it really is an important contribution to the community. So thank you guys for that.
Awesome. Councilor Sloman.
Oh, sorry. I was just pretty much going to say the same thing as Councillor Steer. I think it's a really exciting time in our community to have all of these great projects coming to completion. And yeah, it'll be great to see that grass grow on the ball field and all these other things finished up.
I have a comment about the grass. I do. I you know, it's like we often talk about solutions, you know, what about this? Like maybe they could leave that for the kids and you know, it happens in Tofino. So I just really appreciate the contractors' thoughtfulness and staff's thoughtfulness. And you know, we do all this stuff for the community. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
let's start with the good news, shall we? So paid parking, this year was our first year of combining the two programs. First year of not having a highway closed. I think we're starting to understand how our parking works in Tofino, and so the good news is at the end of the year of Q3 is that we are well on our way to exceed our revenue targets for 2024. We'll know for sure at the end of this program, but remembering that the downtown parking program ends October 31st, so we stop seeing revenues at that point, but we still will see some revenues from our beach parking, although it starts to decline obviously as we get later into the year. In terms of expenses, we're doing pretty well. Obviously our contract's fixed, so we know what we're paying every month. Our incentive fees are related to how much revenue is coming in, so no surprises here. Looking at net revenue, you can see that it's looking good so far this year, but remembering that we're still going to pay those same contract fees every month, the same in January as they are in July. So you'll see this start to even out by the end. I think we are forecasting definitely probably in the range of, I want to say $60,000 to $100,000 more net revenue by the end of the year. So looking forward to that and looking forward to council's decisions on where to allocate those funds at that time. I'll just pause here if anyone wants to ask any questions about paid parking.
Comments?
No, for a change.
I think it's great. I'm just so happy to see it working, and it's just such a benefit. And I noticed that many other communities in BC are starting to put in paid parking because of our success. So it's very interesting.
Yes, I'm really interested to see what's happening.
So when we go somewhere else and pay for parking, it's our fault. Oh, Councillor Sloan with her hand up. Okay, great.
Yeah, I just had one question regarding pay parking. I think that it looks like it's working really well. I just had a bit of feedback from the public about tourists not knowing what sections were what, and I'm just wondering if there's any potential for more signage or clarification on the mapping.
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor Sloan, thank you for the question. We're always ready to make changes to the program. So we have a contractor we work really well with who can make changes usually within hours. And we have a supply of signs and we can also design signs within about a week or two. And so if those concerns from the public can be forwarded to myself or to the superintendent, we'll make those changes as soon as we can. Yeah, so definitely can do that. We just need to know what the concerns are, and we can definitely address those.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McMaster.
We know where most of our revenue is coming from. I mean, the beaches, downtown, or.
I think the previous slide had that. Sorry, get to the things. So we can see here on the left, there are municipal lots. 24 budgets and the actuals, so we can see that the vast majority, or probably 2/3 of our income coming in from the beaches, and then downtown street, probably about 1/3. Doing rough numbers, well, maybe a quarter, 3/4. So yeah, that we can see what we budgeted last year. And again, we budgeted conservatively in downtown because of last year's, the issues we had last year with downtown parking. We budgeted conservatively, but we can see that it actually did quite a bit better. You can see that the numbers between 24 and 24 actuals with beaches are pretty close because we've been doing it for a number of years now, so we're starting to get an idea of what those are. And so I would imagine in future slides, we'll see the downtown streets start to balance out a little bit there. We also had those fee increases in the downtown this year as well, which also affect the value. So something for us to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I just wonder down the road whether we want to consider making the beaches more expensive to park than, say, the downtown. So it helps out the businesses downtown if the parking's a bit cheaper.
I think a rate review every couple of years would be wise. We did build in rate increases I want to say across the board, but definitely downtown, for subsequent years. And so with that, those will come, I think those are actually in the bylaw now, I have to look back into them. But I think it's a good point. The other question I have for myself, and something we're thinking about as a team, is are we expanding the downtown parking into other areas? Because obviously with any parking, you start to see areas that people go that are free, you see everywhere, and then do those push into residential areas, and we're running into some other concerns. We've had a few comments, especially from the neighborhood around here, Peterson and Arnett, because we've got Tonquin parking, we've got downtown parking, and the offshore parking, and we've got some popular free parking, which is, you know, primarily residential. So stuff that we're thinking about, do we need to do a bit of an expansion to the program as well?
Nope, Councillor Anderson.
Back a slide or so, there was, yeah, supplies and maintenance wasn't budgeted for, but there was an expense. I'm just wondering, was that a surprise expense or you just forgot to budget for that?
It's a great question, and to the chair, generally related to signage. I think that I believe the vast majority is based on making this a downtown, making this a lot. We did a lot of new signage for here. We came in clear, we put in curb stops. And then as we get complaints or suggestions from the public, we're adjusting stuff quite often, so we might have had to purchase some signage. That's likely what that is. So we had some projects completed, reported as completed in 24. Community hall and floor placement picture, which I placed in April's slide deck rather than mine. One of those projects. The fleet replacement, we replaced unit 2, our dump truck, which is now our primary plow truck. We completed Arnett Road storm improvements as part, as we were doing the wastewater treatment plant excavations for the conveyance system. We did some work on Cedar Street as well, replacing a water main during that same project. And then we replaced some lift station generators. In terms of projects, this is the house that the district owns in Ocean Park, 8 Ocean Park. Council remembers we had some issues there, some issues with the from our tenants about heating, so we replaced a electric stove, or electric fireplace. Did some roofing work, did some windows, and so the house, I don't know if you ever noticed it, but now has a newer roof and window improvements. So that's completed. That is completed now, but we're in process of Q3. Mackenzie Beach Road improvements, again, completed at this point, but at the end of Q3 was still underway. This obviously was a combination of C&I levy, a large grant from the province, the RMI, and some development cost charge. And we've had, I think, nothing but great reviews. There's some adjacent projects like the washroom that Mr. Ron presented, as well as we'll see one here, a water main install that's happening right now. So we had a fairly large project budget for the remote water monitoring and telemetry upgrades, and this was the idea of putting some infrastructure on Mears Island so we could communicate with our system and understand what's happening there. Over there this year, doing inspections and undertaking coordination team who are always trying to save money and when they really go down to come up with pretty great ideas.
can I make a comment?
Yeah.
A question. How did, I know we discussed at length the new boat and I assume that it was a key piece of equipment that allows for this cost saving. So, getting those people back and forth safely.
I have a boat slide.
Oh, yeah. I'm preempting you. Anyway. I just want to make, so sometimes we see the cost but then we see the benefit later. So it's always good to remember that these things come to fruition.
Can we talk about the next project was, I'm just thank you guys. The Mackenzie Beach Road water meter. So we have a number of large meters in the district, probably under 1,000. Many of those are quite old and not functioning well. In this case, this didn't exist. This is replacing, I think it was 3 or 4 residential meters on a large commercial property. And so this is a fairly large project, but this is what happens when we upgrade our infrastructure. So now as fire flow, we'll be able to monitor it much better. If we had leaks, and previously we'd have to go ask on property to find, where the leak was between the various meters. And so this you can see is in the loop of the Mackenzie Beach, new Mackenzie Beach Road. So accessible by our staff. So this is one of those projects that's, a couple boxes and some pipes in the ground, but I think I'm most happy with them because it's the kind of stuff that we haven't been doing in a lot of years, and it's the boring stuff, but it's stuff that's gonna pay off in terms of as we move forward with limits to growth and trying to find ways to allow more growth. We're gonna need to start planning leaks, and we're gonna need to manage risks better. I think this is one of those projects that speaks to that. Similarly, we have the Gibbon Street water main replacement. So this is a DCC project. So great for us for having a DCC program. This project was combined with the 4th Street water main and the 4th Street sidewalk. So they were combined together as one project, and then one contractor, a bigger project for the fire sector to bid on. This is complete. You can see there was the work here that was happening in Q3 at the time, and this is what a new upgraded water main looks like. So that used to be asbestos cement, and it used to have a smaller diameter. So pretty excited about that. This is the other part of that project, which I think Mayor Law mentioned earlier today. I think we're all pretty happy with. As a resident who lives nearby, I get back and forth between loving this project and not so sure, because I say as Mayor Law, I walk up and down this, I've seen the families go by the house, and it's kind of exciting. And then at the same part, I miss, being, those sidewalks and stuff. So I go back and forth, but mostly really happy with that sidewalk. And again, underneath the sidewalk is a water main at the same diameter as I just showed you in the previous photo that goes all the way to Campbell Street, and as well connects into some water main improvements on Neil Street that we undertook a couple years ago, and then even further onto the Village Green project, but also had a water main. So we're starting to take on that work that we need to do for our water master plan. Again, just speaking to improving the boring stuff, the pipes and the meter boxes as we go, and trying to find water where we can. Hey, I think boat. This is not our boat. This is a boat that looks like our boat from the same company that's building our boat. So the boat is underway now. We will have delivery. It's being built for us. We'll have delivery in 25. This supports our infrastructure teams getting across to Mears Island safely and being able to bring a larger crew and more equipment. So right now we have a really small boat that's probably better suited for a lake. This boat will allow us to bring 4 people, possibly 5 or 6, as well as gear. So that as we go over to do our checks on the flow meters, or we're going to go look at the bypass valve, we can also bring in 2 of our parks crew to brush out path as we go, or an extra hand. We may bring our labor, our crew to lend a hand with some of the heavier equipment. So this project, council will expect to see an update for Q4 presentation, but we're close. So thank you for all your many years of hearing us ask for a vote. I really appreciate it. It's really gonna be safety for our crews, but also our efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, a lot of pictures, because these haven't started yet in the primary designs. The South Tofino Force Main project is a project to improve our malt lift stations and our Lynn Road lift stations, so lift station 7 and 13, as well as potentially putting the line between there to deal with the flows from Taisanis and Eswista. At this point, we're in design. We've gone out and looked at all the private lift stations that are pumping into this. So we have a bit of a gravity main that's got now into a pressure main. And we're trying to untangle this because in the past we haven't been controlling what's going in there. And we also think there's a couple other things we can do. So, this is a project that's being overseen by Mr. Kirkland. He's really digging into this to figure out whether we actually need to spend the money to twin this, or can we do something different with adjusting when pumping times are happening, adjusting the size of our pumps, potentially just making the wet well at mid-malt be a little bit bigger. So we're looking for the most efficient and effective version, because putting another line down a kilometer to a road is very expensive. So we're looking into that, to more to come on that next year. The lift station skate upgrades, we went out to market on this one, and it came back pretty high. We're going to be putting skate equipment on a number of our lift stations, so that all of our lift stations will talk to the mothership at the wastewater treatment plant, which means we won't have to rely just on the flashing lights, and we'll be able to keep these running through power outages. I think it's 7 that we're going to be adding this to. There was one that was quite expensive that might end up being its own project, the Lynn Road station, and so that might have to come back to council as a separate project. But we haven't commenced it, so this likely will come back to council in 25. And Mr. Kirkland will be here to provide a more detailed update on that project. And then I think we have a fancy video to show you. I don't know if has not Satya, has council seen this? Oh, this is exciting.
You can explain it.
This is maybe I could ask Mr. McCall to explain what this is, because he were different thoughts of it.
Yeah.
Communications.
Yep, this is a project between our communications coordinator and the manager of infrastructure and capital projects, about the new wastewater treatment plant. Yeah. Bear with us, we're just gonna bring sound up.
Get Aaron to sing.
Okay, I mean, it's got subtitles.
Sing
Sing us the poop song.
Why is he walking so slow?
Yeah, we can circulate it, we can show it.
Yeah. Aw.
You don't watch the silent version?
Let's, how long is it?
4 minutes.
It's 4 minutes. But it's
super boring.
heavy dialogue.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
About the whole explanation of the process. So it is fascinating, but benefits from sound. Yeah, the community can view it on YouTube.
It's narrated by Sir David Attenborough.
Yeah.
Just as good.
See how that changes your algorithm after
Our apologies.
the sewer videos come.
And that's it for all the presentations. I think maybe I'm handing this back to you, Mr. Or?
Well, I feel like clapping.
Yeah.
Just, because it's, I'm gonna clap. I think it's just. It's so great. I just love seeing so much fantastic work done by such a great team. Great work. All around. All right. I guess we're moving on. we're down to council strategic plan. I think we're 10.5. How long is your presentation? Not long. Okay, let's carry on. We'll get to the closed session.
You, Mayor and Council. I have a brief report this evening on the detailed action plan of Council's strategic plan. So every Q3 staff update Council on the status of these action items, and I won't go through each one line by line for the purposes of time tonight, but happy to answer any questions from Council. The document is organized by Council's 6 priorities, their objectives, and then those action items within each objective. We're happy to answer any questions from Council.
Open it up. Questions for Council? From Council. Councillor Steer.
Yeah, I have my notes there. It was around the 30 by 30 target for the protection of our green spaces. And I wonder if, I know it's in the program or in the development phase. And I know there were some conversations earlier and I think Aaron, you had pointed out a lot of the sort of conversations around how do we define many of these things. And I'm just wondering if we've moved anywhere on that, because I know it's coming up, and I'm just curious because I know there's a whole bunch to go into it before we can get into it, so to speak. And I'm just wondering if there was any updates on that.
Thanks for the question to the chair, Council Steer. I've had a recent conversation with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Trust and Mr. Later, who was also present at that meeting, where we were just trying to find out if there was anything that would overlap with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Trust work on this. And so I think the outcome of that meeting was at least we know where we're connected and what questions we have to ask. Yeah, so I think I'll leave it at that. So that was the last thing I did on it.
Thank you.
Seeing other questions from Council? All right. Excellent. We're on to action tracking.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Law. So again, as a reporting procedure at Q3, I've attached an action tracking report to Council's agenda package. So action tracking is all tasks and it tracks Council's resolutions and assigns them to relevant staff. So attached here are all the active resolutions from Council. Meaning that if the actions here are still outstanding work associated, indicating that they are not yet complete from staff. You'll see in the agenda package some legacy actions. Any standing resolution of Council may not be this specific Council, but could be the previous Council. So again, for the purpose of the time, I won't go through each one line by line, but happy to answer any questions here from Council.
Super. Open it up for questions, Councillor Steer.
Yeah, just a quick question. When some of these are quite old, and I'm wondering at what point in time do we review that? And is there a process for us to say, hey, this doesn't even make sense anymore for this to be still listed as an active item? And I won't point out the specific ones, but do we have a process to revisit this to say, hey, this is ridiculous. Let's move on, get it off your list, our list, your list?
To the chair, to Councillor Steer, I could probably answer that question without talking about, I guess, a specific action item.
Yeah.
Happy to answer questions on any particular items if you're curious about them. At some council terms, we can't get to every action item, and that just has to do with either changing priorities or changing course on a particular item, and new information becomes available, and as we may not proceed with it. And so in that scenario, we would report back to council and sort of provide that update and indicate why it's been deferred or completed or in progress. But if it still sits on that report, there's still a look that staff are having on it, and it is still considered relevant.
Okay. I'm just thinking of some that date back almost 9 years. So, okay. Just check.
Sometimes it takes more time.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from Council? Last chance. None. All right. Moving on to 10.7, we have corporate services again. Now this is council calendar amendment. There was, I know there was a couple councilors that had some objections, and there was some discussion in the background on this, so.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions from council. And you'll see in your council agenda package, the January meeting 1 week prior to, as suggested from some upcoming development items and items from planning services. So council has a couple options here, either to amend and adopt the calendar as amended, or staff are happy to work with Mayor Law to schedule special meetings as well.
Sure, and perhaps I'll just let council in on just a brief discussion I had. There was some potential conflicts if, with the council moving, some councilors wouldn't be able to make the new meeting, which would then result in an absence through no real fault of their own because of previously scheduled work, etc. So the option is to keep the schedule and keep the regular council meeting on the 28th, although it may pare it quite down. If there was, and then have a special council meeting the prior week to get some of those very important development applications, etc. through on time. If that's exactly how it is. So those are the options for council to consider. So I'm going to just open it up for a very brief and quick discussion amongst council to just where we go. Either option is open.
Thanks, Mayor Law. And maybe I'll just ask between the two, was a consideration, I don't mind, I because of the obligations that I would not be able to attend that. And one of the concerns was that, we have our 3 Zoom meetings that were allowed. Option to not have, I'm more than willing to Zoom in to that meeting, but if it is to count as one of my Zoom options, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. But otherwise, I'm more than happy to do it by Zoom and not have it allowed, because I will have other ones that I will have to Zoom in because of conflicts of schedule.
Ms. Etienne.
Through the chair and Councillor Steer, it would count if we do amend the schedule. So what Mayor Law had said earlier, the option would be to avoid that scenario. We understand that we did set council schedule for the year, so coming forward with an amendment now is not ideal, especially with the meeting coming up so soon. So the other option is if staff feel it's necessary, I'll work with Mayor Law on setting a special council meeting date.
And zooming in, of course, the policy of absence does not apply to special council meetings. So that allows councillors to be absent or zoom in without. Correct. Councillor Anderson.
Didn't our bylaw allow the mayor to allow for extra Zoom meetings? Yeah. If there was whatever extenuating circumstances or just by your discretion.
Through the chair, correct. Yeah, previous amendment passed in 2024 allowed mayor or council by resolution to allow extended virtual attendances in circumstances as defined by the meeting procedure bylaw.
And that would be option. The only one of the things that Councillor Thomas cannot make the regular council rescheduled, so it would be counted as an absence. So it's not only Councillor Steer, it's also Councillor Thomas, I'm thinking of as well. So that's yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have no problem with having a special council meeting the week before if that allows us to move ahead as needed and still have councillors not be voted absent. That seems to be the easiest option. I don't think the majority of people have a problem with the new date.
Okay, well then I've listed in recognition of brevity. I'll just make a motion that we not amend we just won't have to make a motion. Actually, we'll just keep it as is, and we will organize a special council meeting to get into what we need done. Okay, thanks. Okay, I believe that brings us to the end of reports and presentations, no bylaws, no unfinished business, nothing. Business initiated by council members. I believe there's a couple. Councillor Sawyer, Councillor Steer, Councillor Surface, Councillor Spelman.
I'll start off with a quick note, just to remind community members that on the 21st is the Fish and Loaves Community Christmas Dinner. And it's supported by so many businesses in town as well as the district, and it's very exciting. So hope to see everyone there. And then the second note was VRL Executive Committee met for the last time this year, before the AGM in February that will determine new membership. And it was Trustee Robertson's last meeting after 8 years serving as vice chair on the executive board.
Excellent. Thank you for the update. Councillor Steer.
Yes, very exciting. This weekend, we had a breakfast with Santa. And let me tell you, it was an incredible event. We had, and I was just talking final numbers with Leah, and it's the largest turnout we've ever had, probably close to 300 altogether, including the kids as well. And over $1,000 raised in donations to the event, which will go towards the Kids Access Fund. It was great. It was so much fun. It was lots of fun. And I just one last thing is I've been lobbying to be Santa for I don't know how many years. And so I don't know if there's a conspiracy going on out there. But anyways, just want to say, if you guys have any pull at staff, please use your influence. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Sloman.
Okay, yes, on December 3rd, I virtually attended the Tourism Tofino board meeting, and we had 2 delegations there, one being from the Tofino Long Beach Chamber of Commerce, the other one being from the West Coast Sustainable Tourism Association. And that delegate discussed how the 1% revenue is collected and a list of the projects supported on the West Coast. And then we also, at the meeting, we discussed the first residential survey results. And also we discussed some possible changes to the members survey. And we also reviewed the financial reports.
Excellent. Excellent. Actually, I have one more quick thing. It's coming up, but look for the dates. But I know the RCMP are looking to schedule a presentation on fraud awareness, especially for elders in our community and surrounding communities who may be particularly vulnerable to fraud. So look for that, and we'll get staff to get some information out of that when it comes up pretty quickly. Super. Okay, so that's it, I believe, for business initiated by council members. Ms. Pelche. Oh, she's not here. Miss McCall.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Law. We'll now do an open call for questions to both members of the public present in the gallery and those participating online. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there's anyone attending online via Zoom and would like to ask a question, you can do so now using the Q&A function on Zoom. Before asking a question, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I will now do a call, going once, going twice, going 3 times. No questions at this time, Mayor Law.
Okay, excellent. Then we'll, would the council like to volunteer to move us into the closed session? Councillor Sawyer.
All right, I move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A, C, K, and 92B of the community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent, employee relations, negotiations, and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. The consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
Seconded by myself. All in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Excellent. So we'll maybe close.